The year was 1882 in the town of American Falls. Saturdays brought in the cowboys. Lord, they filled that saloon to the walls, mingling freely with trappers, homesteaders, railroaders, and such. But the ways of them half-wild cowboys sometimes got to be a bit rough. Like the time a white-faced engineer stared down the barrel of a gun and was told by a liquored-up cowboy, "Mister, you've made your last run. 'Less you leave your hand off on that throttle. We heard there's a brass band aboard. If we don't hear 'em play Dixie, you can all give your souls to the Lord." All along the Oregon Short Line, in cow camps and stores, folks would talk. How the sweet music rang from the platform that day, and the listeners took their hats off and holstered their 6 guns and with teary eyes delivered applause with delight. And when the train pulled out of that station, fresh underwear fetched a good price. Most city folks would hide in the station when the cowboys let loose of their guns. Bottles placed under the platform made for some good shooting fun. They were wild and reckless, that much is true, but in general a fair-minded lot. And a committee of vigilantes was formed if things got a little too hot. That was the way of the cow towns, for too many settlers arrived. The law was a loose sense of right and wrong west of the Great Divide, and except for a brawl or a duel, it was more peaceful than you'd expect. But the winds of change hit the town with a gust when it blew in Johnson and Tex. Johnson was loud, had a foul mouth, and Tex had the eyes of a snake. They pushed a poor old lady down in the street when she couldn't get out of their way. The Oliver house put up boarders, a warm place for a traveler to rest, but at 2 o'clock in the morning, in busted Johnson and Tex. Johnson says, "I'll tell you what, Texas, my Remington shoots straight and true. I'll bet you a $5 gold piece I can blow the heel off that shoe." Well, in the house, when the beds were all taken, late comers with a blanket were put to sleep on the floor, and this target of theirs still covered a snoring man's foot. The 44's blast set blankets to fly, and the startled shouts drowned out the woes of the pilgrim that still had the heel on his boot, but was missing 3 of his toes. Some reached for their guns in resentment, but the laughter of Johnson and Tex carried with it a wide-open challenge when Johnson said, "Okay, who's next?" The town lived in fear for close to a month while they bullied the people around. Folks knew they had to do something, but they needed a plan good and sound. And then it happened. 2 hapless Chinese men were murdered for nothing at all. They were found shot to death in the alley where they picked through the trash from the bar. A meeting was held the next morning by cowboys and merchants as well, concluding these gun-toting owl hoots should leave town or be sent to hell. A committee of vigilance walked into their camp. At their backs the morning sun. They caught these 2 with sleep in their eyes and their hands away from their guns. And they told these hungover owl hoots, "Boys, your days in the falls are over. We got no proof that you did it, or else you'd be swinging for sure." Well, outnumbered and with the sleep in their eyes, they took the easy way out. The committeemen watched while they saddled their mounts and quickly let out for their south. But that night in their camp, Tex said, "Johnson, they's something here sticks in my craw. We got run out of town by some milk toasts. Ain't a one of there I couldn't outdraw. Did you see the way they was all shaking? Their faces just white as a cloud. So maybe it's risky, but we're out of whiskey, and there's ground there we left unplowed." Next morning the townsfolk had wings on their feet like they'd woke up from a bad dream. The railroad was building a bridge across the Snake and was busy hoisting up beams. A great weight was gone from their shoulders. The feeling was much more relaxed. Till a Swede that was hired to chop kindling come tearing down the street with an axe saying, "Watch out, everybody, take over. They're drinking up in the saloon." The committeeman said, "Now, calm down, Swede. What are you talking about?" "Who?" "Them fellers that killed them 2 Chinese and turned this town into a wreck. The skinny one named Janssen and the big one they call Tex." In disbelief they swallowed hard. Plan B was soon begun. Those outlaws would be facing scatterguns or rifles if they turned to run. The street cleared out as word got passed. Dead quiet filled the town as the committeemen formed a group and marched toward the source of the sound. Of busting glass and drunken laughter. From inside came the din. They stood outside and counted. On 10 they busted in. In a panic, Johnson jerked his gun, but all Tex did was grope. Johnson shot a hole in the air, but he soon enough got roped. Tex, he went to flinging chairs, but he tripped and broke his arm. The committeemen were on him quick before he could do much harm. And with their bonds secured, these desperados found themselves delivered to that engineering marvel, the new bridge across the Snake River. The ropes were slung across the beams they stood on, looking down at the mists of fallen water rising high above the ground. "I'll be in hell 10 minutes before you get there," hollered Tex, and he jumped into eternity with the noose around his neck. But Johnson wasn't willing. No, he pleaded for his life. He said, I promise, I'll be good. Just give me one more try." His legs were tightly wrapped around that beam in desperate hope, and the man that finally peeled him off was missing 3 of his toes. In 26 the dam was begun, and the bridge was raised 20 foot. Workers uncovered a couple skeletons and an old pair of high-heeled boots. They just dumped the bones in a hole in the rocks with a skull staring up at the stars, and the boots found a home on a shelf behind the Capitol Pool Hall's bar. Now, railroaders will tell you that they tamed the West more than any lawman's gun, with their bridges and trestles spanning the gaps and obstacles well overcome. But there's one that served double purpose, though you hardly hear of it at all. It not only brought prosperity, it brought peace to American Falls.